for those of you who got the speech about turning them off, you know, don't do what I do here, because, you know, I'm old and I don't remember stuff as much as I used to. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Sorry I couldn't be here at the beginning. Just finishing up my music classes, so I was just kind of packing everything up so I could come over here and enjoy the side talks with you guys. So I did not catch the name. Hey, I don't know that person. How are you doing? What was the name of the young lady who was just up here?
Mimi.
Mimi? Okay. I just want to say I think that's great what you said. I think that's a very powerful message. One of the things that I share with my students, for those of you who don't know me, I'm the music director here at Independence High School. I specifically deal with the instrumental ensembles, so band, orchestra, I taught piano, I teach guitar. And I've been involved in music, hands-on, probably since I was 5 years old. Some of you, how many of you took piano lessons when you were like 5, 7? Like, go ahead and raise your hands. You may not play anymore, but how many of you did that? Okay. So, you know, that's kind of how it started for me. And somewhere along the line, you know, I had a little bit different situation than Mimi did in the sense that my parents kind of did the opposite with me. When I was growing up and going through high school and all this stuff, being a music teacher was probably the furthest thing I thought I was going to do. I always thought being a teacher would be fun. I mean, you were talking about, you know, ripping out the mimeographs and all that kind of stuff, or the little things so you could play teacher. I was asking Mr. Elwell if he ever did that. And I remember as a kid, I had a chalkboard at home. And I remember playing teacher to my imaginary class behind me. And I remember as a kid, I was always getting in trouble. I always talked too much. You know? And you ever had a teacher that gave you lines? Yeah. You had to write like 50 lines, like, I will not talk when the teacher is talking. And you had to do like 50 times. So that was my first recollection of being a teacher, was cool. I can punish the kids by telling them the right lines. So I pretend that my imaginary friend, my imaginary student, Johnny, you were talking about talking. Give me 50 lines, and then I would of course become Johnny. So I'd write my 50 lines, right? Somewhere along the line, I figured out, what the hell am I doing? I'm punishing myself. This is ridiculous. But I thought about being a teacher all along, right? So then, you know, I'm going through school, and, you know, I was very fortunate to have some really inspiring teachers all the way up through, you know, my high school years. And actually, the one area I thought I was going to go into was biology. Biology was like the subject I just dug. I loved it the most. It was just a lot of fun. I had a great teacher. And then I got into physics a couple of years later on down the road, and I started thinking, ooh, wait a minute, this physics thing is pretty cool too. And I had a very dynamic teacher. So then I'm starting to fill out the college application and so on and so forth. And I was kind of torn. I didn't know which way to go. And I remember going up to my mom, and I said, okay, so I'm going to go into science. I'm going to do biology. I'm going to do physics. I'm not sure which one. And she just kind of looked at me like I had two heads. And she goes, whoa, time out. You're going to do what? And I went, well, I think I'm going to do science. And she goes, what about your music? It was always something I was really good at, but I never really thought about doing it, you know? And I went, I didn't have an answer for that. She goes, but you've been doing it since you were 5. I mean, don't you like it? I mean, you still do it to this day, right? I go, yeah. She goes, well, do you love it? I go, yeah, yes. And she goes, well, you should then be a music teacher. And she walked out of her. And I went, and I kind of said, but you know, it resonated with me, and I went, yeah, okay. But that was the furthest thing in my mind I thought my parents would ever want me to do, was get a career in music. I mean, I think you hear about starring musicians all the time and so on and so forth. So they kind of went at it from the back end, and so I ended up thinking, well, yeah, you know what? I think that would make me the most happy, and so good thing for Mom to intervene, because otherwise I might be teaching biology here at Independence High School, which wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, you know, obviously. But you know, music was really my passion ever since I was a little kid, and so I was fortunate that worked out. So for me, that's kind of a personal note. I just want to ask all of you guys a real quick question. How many of you are currently playing music? Currently play music of some kind. I don't care if it's in my band or whatever. You play music. Okay. Keep them up. How many of you used to play music? And it's okay that you don't do it anymore. I'm just curious. How many of you used to do it? Okay, I mean, you're just not doing it anymore for whatever reason. Okay. How many of you listen to music? Okay. How many of you watch The Voice? American Idol, things along those lines. So you think you could dance, Dancing with the Stars, all that kind of good stuff? Yeah. Relax. Okay. So the for me, why is music important? Well, I think you pretty much just kind of answered your own question, because let's face it, we all listen to it. And how many of you have an iPod or an iPhone or listen to it on your, on your little smart device? It's really interesting that music, I think sometimes we just kind of take it for granted. It's always there. It's very easy to access anymore. You got your iPod, you can download things off the internet, so on and so forth. You listen to it all the time. You go to dances, you dance to it. You turn on the stereo when you're doing homework. How many of you do that? You've got something going on in the background. So, it's one of those things that sometimes, we don't even realize it, but it's just always there. And if you can imagine a world without it, just think about okay, you didn't have music. What would that world be like? For me, that was always the question is, well, how, what would I dance to? I suppose I'd start banging on rocks and everything else, but then I'd be creating music, wouldn't I? So for me, it's one of those things, it's it's always just sort of there. In terms of why it's important, you can do all the research and all the studies and all this stuff about right brain development and giving folks a creative outlet. That's all very true. Beyond that, you can talk about things like those of you who are involved in some sort of a group or were involved in a group. You can talk about just the whole aspect of teamwork and how you were able to play a piece of music together. And that a flute player can't play the tuba part, and the tuba player can't play the flute part for obvious reasons, because one plays low notes, one plays high notes. So you learn how to work together collaboratively as a team to have a common goal in mind. That's something that is very important when you get out into the workforce. You're going to be surrounded with people. You're going to be given, your boss is going to give you a project to work on, and you're going to put a team together, 5 or 6 people, and you're going to work on this project together. And you're going to come up with some sort of a product. That's going to happen to most of you in the careers that you probably choose to do. The other thing that we're looking at in terms of education, we're making a shift into this thing called Common Core, which some of you have probably heard about. And one of the things that I looked at music, why it's important to keep it in the schools, is because it really enhances everything that's going on in the other core subject areas. And I don't have time to go into the whole thing, but with music, it really does. There's a direct application to a lot of the subjects that you guys are taking right now. There's science involved in music, there's math involved in music, history and culture, so social science, math, English, especially if you're involved in a choir, if you're singing, well, that's poetry that you're just, put into music. So there's so many really cool things about it that's a direct application to the things that you're doing right now. For those of you who are going to, well, you're all going to move on from high school. You're all going to probably go to college, I hope. You're all eventually probably going to become married and have children. Maybe not, okay? But, one of the things that music is always kind of one of those topics that occasionally comes up about, well, maybe we can't afford to have music in our schools. Well, it's from what I just told you, how can we afford not to? And for those of you who are going to become parents of children who are going to hopefully, you're going to become voters and you're going to have a say in the future for whether or not we continue to have music in our educational places, in schools and so on and so forth. So if anything, maybe I'm hoping, maybe I might have just put a little bug in your ear that when you do get to that point in your life where you can make a difference and to speak up for keeping music because it's important to you and important for your children to be part of it in some way, shape, or form. Whether or not they perform it or just learn to listen and enjoy it, I hope that you'll think of this and maybe put in a good word to make sure that music stays alive in our schools and because by keeping it alive in our schools, we'll keep it alive in our communities and, of course, the world. Thank you very much.